of very atrocious programs that the United States has had, unfortunately, such as MK Ultra, and which was from the CIA, experimentation with the minds of people, the brains, and COINTELPRO, which was a form of Stasi, and I really identify them with the COINTELPRO because in Puerto Rico it was huge. 74,000 people's lives were affected by it. There were people that wanted to pursue independence for Puerto Rico, and the FBI chased them and stalked them and made their lives very, very hard. And they had to end up paying them a little compensation, nothing compared to what they did to their lives. So that's very close to my heart. The COINTELPRO tactics, and which are a variation from the Stasi. So that's what happens nowadays. Targeted individuals get attacked with the invisible weapons that are called directed energy weapons, and that cause Havana syndrome. The National Academies of Science and Engineering concluded that the people that were at the Havana embassy sustained the damage to their brains as a result of directed energy weapons attacks. And in news reports, the CIA admitted that it wasn't any foreign power carrying out those attacks. So then you have to wonder who was it. That's basically what a targeted individual is. They are victims of organized stalking, psychological operations, and physical attacks through directed energy weapons.
It's horrible, and you hear many people talk about these things, and they sound crazy, right? Because it's like, what are you talking about? The government is stalking you, but it's very real. And so I'm curious, for you, did it escalate to a place where, as you mentioned, you were a targeted individual for many years without maybe knowing it? So what was the point that you realized that you were targeted?
Oh, because the organized stalking became really bad, and I didn't know what was going on. Things disappeared from my house. Things were broken. People stopped. My friends would not say hello to me on the street. And I just couldn't understand what was going on until I spoke with somebody in the mainland, and she told me, "Oh my God, you're a targeted individual." And I was like, "What? What is that?" And I started looking. That's when I came up with Targeted Justice website. I believe that a lot of the information about targeting is filtered from Puerto Rico. And in hindsight, I see a lot of people around me who are targeted. In fact, one of my dear friends, she published a book, like a whistleblowing book, on this one of these oligarchs of the island, because Puerto Rico is sort of an oligarchy. People here don't pay attention, but it's really important for the United States. And this man, she had worked for him, and she published a book on what a terrible person he was, and the whole hostile work environment. And within, I think, 2 weeks of publishing it, she published it through, in Puerto Rico, she started getting voice-to call. The problem is she didn't realize it's not schizophrenia. She was hospitalized, and so people there don't realize that there is a patented technique that is produced through microwave beams, that is an auditory effect that it's commonly referred to, voice-to call. So I think a lot of Puerto Ricans are targeted. They don't even know it. But I came about that, and then I started reading and just consuming everything that came into my hands. And that's how I figured it out. The things got really bad for me, so I was very lucky that Targeted Justice rescued me from Puerto Rico, and it literally airlifted me right before the Hurricane Fiona came. But it wasn't just because I was Ana Toledo, but because I was an attorney, and Targeted Justice had been looking for an attorney for 5 years to file this really important lawsuit to end this atrocious program. And that's why I was saved. I'd like to say that I was saved and airlifted from Puerto Rico.
So what is this organization then? Targeted Justice?
Targeted Justice was founded in 2017. You can look up the website. It's targetedjustice.com. They also have a Substack newsletter by the same name, and it's free. It provides information for people. A lot of people, when they are targeted individuals, they cannot talk about it with other persons because they deem them mentally unstable. That is one of the tactics of the program, which is to place people in mental hospitals. One of the very dangerous places where you can live as a targeted individual is Florida, because over in Florida, you have what it's called a Baker Act, that somebody like a policeman or an ambulance driver could literally put you in a mental facility for a 72-hour hold, and without any due process, without a hearing before a judge, and your freedom is just like that. And that's one of the ways that they take away the purpose, is take away your credibility. Nobody believes you. And so Targeted Justice in its website provides a lot of mechanisms for people not only to protect themselves from these type of attacks, also physically, giving them tips, explaining how V2K works and what it is. For example, there is a type of, and I don't know if I can do it in your program, but there's a type of headphones that they are bone conducting, and you can try them for free at Best Buy. And those many TIs that have V2K, I am fortunate I don't have it. Well, they swear by it, and they say that it totally blocks it. And so we try to help this community that is very anonymous. However, we estimate from court documents produced in El Haiti versus Cable case, we estimate the number of targeted individuals in the United States to oscillate between 300 and 400,000 persons. Most of them don't even know it. Sometimes, you can wake up. This is what would happen to me when I didn't know I was targeted. I would wake up and my body just didn't feel right. I'm like, oh my God, I'm aging so fast. Like my joints and everything. And I was pretty healthy and worked out. That's one of the things that counteracts it. But so you wake up in the mornings, and the thing is that while you sleep and you're still is the best way for the people that are doing the do attacks on you to carry them out. So, that is, if you're feeling a little, not yourself in the mornings, I really think it's not fibromyalgia. It's that you are being microwaved. And a lot of people that exert their First Amendment right to expression, they are targeted. We have seen Congress, whistleblowers have gone to Congress and explain how private individuals can nominate as domestic terrorists people to the FBI. And what this means, and I wanted to make it very clear to all Americans out there, because this is something that concerns the freedoms of everybody. What that means is that they will place you in the terrorist screening database. You will not be stopped at the airport because FBI knows that you are not a terrorist threat. In fact, one of the documents that we filed as part of the complaint is a sworn statement by a former terrorist screening center deputy director who said that these people in handling codes 3 and 4 do not represent a terrorist risk, and that's why they are not screened as such. They are there for other reasons, and of course he didn't explain the reasons. So sometimes immigration reasons. Well, I'm an American citizen, and I have nothing to do with immigration, and I was there. So we filed a lawsuit. I filed a lawsuit on behalf of Targeted Justice to get the names of the which is called, they're designated as non-investigative subjects, to have them removed from the terrorist screening database. we want eliminated those categories 3 and 4 because they are unconstitutional, and because this list that is shared with 18,000 law enforcement agencies, state, tribal, and federal, over 530 something corporations, the biggest corporations, and 1,440 entities, nonprofits, and NGOs. These are numbers of as of 2019. I believe this has substantially grown, but the evidence that I have is these are the numbers. And so, the Supreme Court has said in a case called TransUnion versus Ramirez that you cannot spread information, calling somebody a terrorist, spread it to third parties, because that is, defamation, and that causes damages. So we filed a lawsuit to eliminate this list because we believe that this handling codes 3 and 4 are the roster for the human experimentation program of targeted individuals. I don't know if I just put so much information in there, but I hope you could follow it.
Well, so just to go to the essence of who essentially, which organization is deciding that these, as you said, the handling codes, right, to treat to treat U.S. citizens. Well, as you know, U.S. citizens are actually property of the United States. So, unfortunately, unless you've really done the work to reclaim your status, right, and to separate, if you're a U.S. citizen, you're actually property of the federal government. So that's why I think they can actually do this under their codes and things like this. But what is their basis or logic in terms of when they assign handling codes and basically treat people like domestic terrorists or whatever the language is? Which organization is doing it, and what is their legal basis essentially for what they're doing? What in their twisted, warped minds? What are they actually? How are they justify this?
Okay. Well, the organization is the Terrorist Screening Center, that is an intra-agency operation of the FBI. That is why you have those FBI agents going to Congress saying that they were pressured to designate people as domestic terrorists. They know that these people don't represent a terrorist threat, but they have financial incentives to put these people in there. Now, other agencies also nominate people. Okay, CIA, or there's FBI has legal attaches in different countries that send nominations. So the gatekeeper, the person that decides, the entity that decides to put people on this list is the FBI. The legal authority for it is called the Homeland Security Presidential Directive 6 of 2003, signed by former President George Bush. And it basically gave the authority to create a list of known and suspected terrorists. That's all that that presidential directive executive order allowed. Now, the FBI went beyond what was legally authorized. That was not an authorization of Congress, by the way. And they have been swelling the numbers in this list, and including people that they know don't meet the reasonable suspicion standard to be included as terrorists. The freedoms of many people are in jeopardy because of this, and that's one of the challenges to the list is basically that the FBI accepts the nomination, passes judgment without complying with any due process, doesn't notify people, and condemns you to a life of torture, because once you are on this list, you become a targeted individual. And that's, let me explain to you how targeted justice got to this conclusion, because it's not like, you're making it. No. One of our plaintiffs, who is one of the founders of targeted justice, he was getting microwaved and he had a blood clot on his leg. They called the ambulance. He lived with his 87-year-old mother. in the house, in 9 acres. Okay, so the two deputy sheriffs come in the house and said, the ambulance is out there waiting for you, but we will not let them in because we were told there was a terrorist living in this house and we have to secure the area. Meanwhile, he's on the floor almost dying. The ambulance people, they when he finally got into the ambulance like an hour later, they were like, really nervous, like, we're gonna lose him. So that's when he made the connection that the targeting had to do with the terrorist database. Then in 2019, Mr. Groh gave this sworn statement in the El Haiti versus Cable case, which was a case that was challenging the terrorist list per se. And he said, yeah, there's a lot of people there that don't meet the terrorist criteria and are not screened as such. That's why targeted individuals go into a plane, into an airport, they go through TSA, and they don't get stopped or screened like suspected terrorists, which is what was authorized by Homeland Security Presidential Directive number 6.
Right, exactly. And so you're filing a case now, right? So can you tell us a bit about your case, what you're doing to try to get some justice? I mean, this is like, it's absurd, the fact that we actually are living in a world like this. But yeah, tell us about what you're doing to try to remedy this.
Well, 4 months ago in January, I filed on behalf of 18 plaintiffs. Actually, it was 17 plaintiffs. I had to amend and include one more because as soon as we filed the lawsuit, they started microwaving the little 3-year-old daughter of one of the plaintiffs. So we amended the complaint to put her also as plaintiff. So 4 months ago, on January 11th, we filed a lawsuit, and it might not be a surprise to you that the 3 principal defendants that are Christopher Wray, who is the chief of the FBI, Alejandro Mayorkas, and Mary Garland. The 3 of them, 2 weeks ago, I think 3 weeks ago, got articles of impeachment that in the House of Representatives that will be processed in the congressional way, whatever. So we filed suit against them first, like I say, to on a declaratory judgment, to get a declaration from the court saying it is illegal to have non-terrorist on a terrorist database. That's a principal claim. Second claim also is, there's also for damages. And one of our plaintiffs, who is Dr. Lambert, I think he's like the first civilian that was diagnosed with Havana syndrome by Dr. Hofer in Miami. And the important part about Havana syndrome is that it's in the law, we have an expression called, it's res ipsa loquitur, which is the thing speaks for itself. And you cannot have Havana syndrome if you have not been the victim of directed energy weapons attack. I didn't say that. That has been said by the National Academies of Sciences and Engineering. So that's one of our plaintiffs. After 6 months of being attacked with directed energy weapons, you develop Havana syndrome. And it's not like just standing in front of your microwave oven does it. So that is part of the allegations are not only the torment and the torture that many of these people have gone through, but also the physical damages. And obviously the declaratory judgment that if they are not terrorists, they shouldn't be in a terrorist database. And subject to the defamation that entails, many of them try to get a job. They are denied jobs because these list is shared with credit reporting the companies, with hiring, like headhunters, that kind of thing, So the government defamation is huge, and it needs to stop. although there's like 300 to 400,000 estimated in the United States, there are 6 million around the world. And this is really important because people around the world, many of them, they think it's the act of, it's the work of witchcraft. They don't know what's going on with them. Many people, for example, in Europe, they cannot speak about the V2K because they are automatically placed in a mental hospital. I know about this young man in Britain that they force inject him every week for being supposedly mentally ill. And if he refuses, they will put him in a mental hospital. And I believe, these are not medications, but chemicals that are injected into people to facilitate, the mind, the torture and the mind control. The key part about B2K not being schizophrenia is that medicine doesn't shut it off. And there is a patent for it. And the United States has acknowledged that it has used the auditory microwave beam effect on enemy combatants in Iraq and in Desert Storm, whispering, just sending the messages to the enemy combatants. So there is an acknowledgement by the United States armed forces that they use this technology on people.
Yeah, but so their logic in terms of why they're doing this is experimentation purposes. Is that the logic of this program?
Yes. Well, I have learned a lot. I only arrived to targeted justice in September, but it has been like an intensive 10-hour seminar for me, and I am very grateful for that. The goal of the program is to get you to kill yourself. It's very cruel, and they just do really atrocious things to you to force you into being destitute and into trying to kill yourself. For example, the polls we have internal, the polls that Targeted Justice has carried out reflect that 14% of targeted individuals are homeless, whereas the national average is 0.5%. So Mr. Lighthouse explains to me that, being a targeted individual, it's some sort of life insurance in the horrible sense that they are not allowed to murder you because you're supposed to kill yourself. They want to know how to, they want to have an absolute control of minds and know what it takes to, for example, somebody like me, to dominate somebody like me. And, I'm sure they regret having targeted me. It is my hope they regret it. But let me give you an example of something really atrocious that they do. There is this lady in Ohio. Her daughter has Down syndrome. She's a 34-year-old woman with Down syndrome. And even though the mother, who is the originally targeted one, she's in her 70s, doesn't have voice to skull, they torment and torture her 34-year-old daughter every night. And she can't comprehend, she can't understand what's going on. She just hears the voices and fights with these voices until sheer exhaustion. She sleeps until she falls asleep. And the mother in the room next door is hearing her daughter fight with these voices from nowhere. And so the mother cries herself to sleep. I mean, one mother can tolerate this atrocious suffering on your daughter. I immediately looked up, and there is no correlation between schizophrenia and Down syndrome patients. So it's just so obvious that the level of cruelty that these people are capable of carrying out is beyond what I had ever imagined any human to be capable of. So that's the goal. The goal is to discover how to control the uncontrollable people, and what works and what doesn't, and and the end goal is to make you kill yourself.
Yeah, that's horrendous. How do they like broadcast? Is it, many? We did an episode for conspiracy theory with Jesse Ventura many seasons ago. You might want to watch it. Actually, it's on targeted individuals. I'll send it to you later. But it's we talked to a bunch of people, some of whom felt like they were being broadcast from Gwen Towers, right, which are across the United States. Are they broadcasting from massive towers like that, or are they like sometimes they were do they have someone like positioned in your vicinity to microwave you, or is it directed from satellite? I mean, do you know the details?
Thank you so much for that question, because see, I assume that it's out there, and thank you for that question. See, targeted justice expert who is Richard Lighthouse. He has studied and he has published a lot of free ebooks that are available in the Targeted Justice website for people to, just because information is power. Once you know what's going on, it's easier to handle it. 90% of the directed energy weapons attacks, which includes the V2K, come from cell towers. Cell towers have been weaponized with a microchip that was patented by Ericsson. I can send you the patent number. And the way they do it, these attacks come from Shrevers Air Force Base. Our own military is firing microwave weapons at innocent civilians. And that's the truth. So no, your neighbor cannot microwave you. Maybe there are little contraptions and other things but in order to fire a microwave weapon, you need the electricity equivalent to like 400 homes, or the electricity that something like the Empire State Building has, okay? Or the electricity that cell towers have. So just a normal residence doesn't have the electric capacity to fire microwave weapons. That's very important for targeted individuals to know, because one of the ways that the enemies, deal with this is trying to make you fight with your neighbor. And that's when, they get accused, they get sent to jail, they get called crazy. They get put in mental hospitals. Last year, in August of 2022, an unfortunate event happened. A targeted individual in Ohio murdered the 4 neighbors, saying that it was them who were doing the do attacks, and the voices calling them. Guess what? He murdered them. He didn't find any weapons there. It's just very, very sad. I'm not saying that neighbors are not in, many neighbors are in the gang stalking and in the Stasi. I'm not saying that they're not, because unfortunately, this program has permeated society in so many ways that sometimes, one of my plaintiffs got poisoned a month ago in a restaurant. She had to stop her car, just throw up because she got poisoned there. It has one of our advisory board members after she checked in, she got kicked out of her Airbnb the next day because she was a security risk. Imagine this. So we're seeing things that weren't happening before we filed the lawsuit. After we filed the lawsuit, things have gotten a little bit rogue, and they just never thought. I guess they never thought that there would be a viable way to end their program, because more than 200 lawsuits filed by TIs have been dismissed. They have been called, mentally unstable or conspiracy theorists, and it's a long list of people that were clearly targeted, but they just didn't have the information to file it like we have filed it. And
No, that's amazing, and I'm excited for your case. Do you know when, like, does it go to, what's the next step? I mean, does it go to a hearing or trial, or how does that work?
Okay, well, we filed the lawsuit against these individuals and FBI and DHS because I don't know if you've heard of the infamous fusion centers. And DHS, sets the standards and the norms and the operating rules for the fusion centers that carry out a lot of the Stasi type conduct, vigilante conduct. So we filed against these people under official capacity for failing to comply with the Constitution and the laws of the United States, and also on their individual capacity, because many of them knowingly are placing innocent civilians and they're treating them as domestic terrorists, even though they know that they don't meet the standard. The official capacity defendants already filed, and I filed a motion to dismiss, and I replied to it. And just last week, the individual capacity, who are the same ones, but under Bivens, which is a civil rights claim, they filed their motion to dismiss last week. I am in preparation of the reply there too. I believe the judge, very wisely, is waiting for that reply in order to do a joint decision on those two motions to dismiss, and from there, we will take it. We also have one pending limited discovery request, because the official capacity defendants said that these were, and this was like on 55 occasions, they put words like fantastical allegations, implausible, and it was all this language to basically deem plaintiffs delusional. And, we pointed out to the court that that's hate speech, because these are victims. It is not plausible to have so many people tell the same story and for them to be in the TSDB. It's just mathematically impossible. So we're asking for the court to order defendants to produce the TSDB status of these people, of these plaintiffs. And defendants have refused so far. So that's another matter that the court has to adjudicate on. And it's part of the, the fact finding. If people should know, this list is not a classified document. It's stated by the FBI. 80% of the lawsuit, which is in the homepage of targetedjustice.com, you can find the Second Amendment complaint. 80% of it is based on government documents, deposition transcripts, sworn statements. I didn't make any of that up. Okay, all of it comes from documents that are what we call in the legal field uncontroverted facts. Most of them produced, for example, let me give you just one pearl of an example, which is Inspector General from the Department of Justice Report 2008-16 says that talking about the irregularities on the terrorist screening center, that FBI field offices nominate people to the terrorist screening database without complying with any FBI regulations. Let that sink in. It's the weaponization of the government, as no one is talking about it. Because in Congress, you've been hearing about people being pressured to classify people as domestic terrorists, but they don't know the real consequences of it. And that is what our lawsuit is about. And that's why every American should be aware of it and should read it and should, just demand that this project is defunded. It's one of those black projects that it be defunded by Congress, because if Congress pulls the plug on the money, it'll stop. We're doing our part. I have a very courageous set of plaintiffs whose targeting and whose attacks have increased substantially. We also have in the targeted community many people that are very vocal denouncing what's going on. and the wrath of these criminals is unleashed against them because their attacks have increased. Many of them have been made homeless, like all of a sudden. So it's a battle that one of the good things that has come out of it is that the targeted community has come together. I think for the first time, targeted community has come together because they know that we're speaking the truth and that there is justice at the end of the tunnel. And that's that's our hope. Yes, the damages are there. One of the things that I want to make very clear is that people that are accused criminally, criminal defense attorneys have to pay attention. A lot of targeted individuals that don't even know they're targeted, they should demand their terrorist screening database status, because if they are in that database, that means they could be subjected, the V2K or to entrapment. And those are very important defenses for anybody who is criminally accused. So I urge criminal defense attorneys to look into this because it could make a huge difference in your client's defense.
This is a big case, and I'm very excited to see what happens here. Have there been any previous cases in terms of the case law that you've seen of basically, obviously you can learn from previous cases. Has there been any success in this regard, like any a similar fact?
Well, the biggest success is, as I mentioned, that case, which is, it wasn't even filed as a targeted individual case. That case, TransUnion LLC versus Ramirez, is a Supreme Court 2021 case. That case had to do with a man that applied for a car loan, and the TransUnion, the credit, it was denied, and then the TransUnion sent him back that he was on the OFAC terrorist list. It turns out that the TSDB is a consolidated list, and then all the other entities such as OFAC feed from it. And in this case, the Supreme Court concluded that just stating that somebody is a terrorist or a suspected terrorist to a third party creates damage, the presumption of injury in fact and damages. Unfortunately, over 200 lawsuits, we have to update the number, filed by TIs have been dismissed by the courts because, and I get it, when you talk about these things, it sounds so hard to believe, okay? But when you have thousands of people telling the same story, the same slashed tires, the same microwave burns, the same, the same organized stalking, chasing by cars, when the same pattern repeats itself thousands of times, it stops being implausible. And so, yes, so that's a long answer. The short answer is there have been many, they have been all dismissed, and the difference from this case to all of those that have been dismissed is that the main claim is it is undemocratic and unconstitutional to have innocent civilians in a terrorist database. There's no reason for it. There is no legal justification for it. FBI came forth in a sworn statement in this case saying that it is secret criteria that they use to place people in there that are not terrorists. Well, that's not allowed in our democratic system. Everything's supposed to be, even the criteria for watch listing actual terrorists has to be published in the Federal Register, and it's public. So it's unacceptable, it's undemocratic, and it's unconstitutional. So that's the difference that from the prior cases. They sued, maybe sometimes correctly, sometimes not correctly, the persons responsible for the targeting, but they didn't do it through this mechanism, which is the declaratory judgment request for the unconstitutionality of this. That's just one of the claims. There are other claims attached to it, and with the discovery, it is our intention that through discovery we will be able to connect the dots with the experimentation program. We're not going to leave anybody behind. There's 6 million people around the world suffering. And that's, in fact, this Saturday I'm having a Twitter space in Spanish, because a lot of people, Spanish-speaking people, most of the resources for targeted individuals are in English. And so there's a lot of people that don't understand. So I'm having a Twitter space in Spanish to reach out to those people that they just don't understand what's going on.
And thank you for the work you're doing, and good luck with these cases and getting the awareness out there for others that that are suffering to get involved with you guys, and basically there's power in unity, as we know. So this is an important sea change in us recognizing that the government does not have our best interests at heart, and not just on this front, but on every front. So yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens with your case, and again, I'm happy to see you educating people and going back to that real principle of there's a problem within our system that allows these things to happen, because essentially the system is a federal corporation that sees all its citizens as assets of the corporation, and we have been increasingly dehumanized, stripped of our constitutional rights as a result of this ideology that started over 100 years ago now, but culminates with things like these human experimentation programs, which you're discussing. But obviously we've seen it for decades with, as you mentioned, MK Ultra and COINTELPRO and the Patriot Act, and all these different things, right, that have consistently eroded our what we thought was constitutional rights, because that's all gone. It's all just one big corporate feudal system, right? And hopefully a case like yours can start to chip away at that power and start to reconfigure the way people see the system, not as a benevolent, friendly system, but as a very dangerous way of existing, to allow this thing to continue.
Well, along those lines, I wanted to say there is a very interesting case you should look into, because it's ongoing right now. And it's Missouri and Louisiana versus, I don't know if it's Biden or entities of the federal government that publicly said that our mines are part of the United States infrastructure. And as such, they have a right to police them and to control them. And that case is currently going on. It was filed in Louisiana. It's Missouri and Louisiana versus, again, I don't know if it's Biden or, but it's in our Substack newsletter. They said, that our minds, our brains are part of the American infrastructure. And that is just so dangerous and in such in violation of the Fourth Amendment and the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizure, which is also part of what we're alleging in our complaint, because this targeting includes all of that. So I really urge you to look into that, because that is the frontier of not having any freedom. That's right.
Well, and again, it's amazing how this has all been co-opted for a long period of time, and it's just it's a gradualism of basically stripping you of what you thought were your freedoms, because they weren't there once they. Going back to, again, the corporation, the United States is a federal corporation. So once you understand that, everything changes. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens with your case and your journey of finding your freedom, your peace, and those for others that you're working with and helping. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's that you just summed it up perfectly. Targeted individuals just want freedom. They want their lives back. And I have this huge responsibility, because so many people are counting on this case to get their lives back, despite their health having suffered, their finances, having lost their friends, their family, but they just want to be free again. and that's why it's so important. And I really thank you, because I know it's very courageous of you to do this. Not many people have the courage to have me speak, and very few people have done it. And I know, it's a lot of pressure, and you're very courageous, and I honor you for that.
Oh, it's nothing. Thank you for what you're doing. Yeah, that was great.